listening to Season 4, Episode 10 of Vixen, a Black beauty and pop culture podcast. If you enjoy what you hear today, please leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts. Today's episode is on the legendary New York City nightclub, The Tunnel. Now, let's start the show. Hi guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of Vixen. Before we start and before I explain what's going on with this episode, I want to take the time out to say rest in peace to Michael K. Williams. He unfortunately passed yesterday. I'll be honest with y'all and transparent, that news hit me like a ton of bricks. I have not thought about just what I want to say, but I'm just going to speak from the heart to y'all. One of the things that really shook me about his death is once I realized how long I have been consuming his artwork and watching him on my TV screens. I have been watching him since I was 10 years old, and I'm 28 now. And when I heard about his passing and saw that he was only 54, I was like, wow, because he's just one of those people that I never thought about him dying, or I just thought he would always be there because I've been watching him for so long. And it's been amazing to see his career progress from his very first role in Bullet with Tupac all the way until now with Lovecraft Country. It's just amazing. He was an amazing artist, an amazing dancer, an amazing actor, but he was also a good damn person. And that's something that the world needs more of. We need more people with beautiful spirits like that. I'm sorry if I'm getting choked up a little bit, y'all. I feel like I've cried on every single episode this season. I'm sorry, but I mean, we just need more good people. And he's been one of my favorite actors for so long, but I think I truly fell in love with him as a person when he did his series Black Market on Vice a few years ago. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch. I believe every episode is on Hulu. It was just amazing to just watch him go around and speak to literal strangers and just connect instantly like old friends. And people felt so comfortable with him and were just so vulnerable with him. And he would be vulnerable right back. And he never was judgmental. He never made people feel small for what they were involved in. And it's very rare that a celebrity can go and just be good on any block like that. You know what I mean? Like he can go to any hood and just fit right in with the people. The people love him. It was just so much fun to watch. And I just always was like, you know who would have a great talk show? Michael K. fucking Williams. That would be amazing. He just was a good person overall. And I'm just so fascinated by not only his work, but just the things that he did for his community, the life that he lived, the fact that he was able to impact and touch so many people in just 54 short years is nothing short of amazing. I want to say thank you to him for, giving us the iconic characters that he's given us over the years. Omar, Chalky, just so many, sorry, y'all. Wow. Wow. I cannot believe that he has left this earth, but his death has made me think a lot about two things: impact and community. And I have told y'all before, but I will never stop telling y'all, I love the community that we've built via Instagram, via email, via this podcast. If you've ever gotten anything out of this show, I'm so happy about that. I love you. And I will never stop doing this show because I want to continue to pour into the communities that I love. And just make sure that I leave this world a little bit better than I found it through my art, through my craft, and just from being a good fucking person. I'm still pretty shocked. This only happened yesterday. I recorded this episode a little later than I usually do, but I'm glad that I did so that I could speak on him on this episode. And just, I want to dedicate this episode to Michael K. Williams, who's been an inspiration to me for years. And again, not just what he gave us as far as his artistic work, but just being the beautiful spirit and person that he was. Never heard anyone have a bad experience with them. Overall, a good, kind person who just wanted to build up his community and make them stronger, and give them hope, give them joy, and just pour into people. And those kind of things are really what's important. I know that we all get caught up in other things and things that are minuscule or not that deep, and we have our time, we all get upset, but like, that is what's truly important, building community. So I've never taken y'all for granted, the community that I have built through Vixen, but even more so now, I will continue to pour into y'all. Thank you for all of your kind words. Thank you for all that you do. I love you guys. I love our community. And rest in peace, Michael K. Williams. We will go ahead and get into this episode. So again, if I have not already said it, welcome to an all new episode of Vixen, y'all. So let me explain what's going on with this episode, okay? So y'all know this season is sadly coming to an end. I really cannot believe it. But again, I just want to thank y'all for all the love that you've shown on the episodes from this season. And when I was reflecting on the episodes we've done, I just am really proud of the variety of the women that we've talked about and discussed. But I only have one regret from this season. My only regret is not doing an investigative episode like the Instagram Baddie series, the sex tape scandal series, or like the tip drill episode. And the only reason why there was no episode like that this season is because I didn't like the one that I wrote, y'all. I'll be honest with y'all. I'll be transparent. The one that I wrote, I felt like it didn't really tie in with like the theme of the show. It didn't really go with the podcast. So I decided to scrap it and just save it for another time or another project. Honestly, I really didn't know what I was going to do with it. I was going to just let it sit in my drafts. But however, because I have been asked to cover this topic so many times, and I'm not really ready for this season to end, y'all. I ain't gonna lie. And I'm gonna miss y'all so much. I was like, why not just revamp the episode a little bit and release it as a bonus? And then next week, I will do the finale episode. So this episode comes out today, obviously, or whenever you're listening to it. And then next Wednesday, the finale episode will come out. So technically, this season will have 11 episodes instead of the usual 10. All right, so before we get into it, let me just add a quick disclaimer. Now, remember, y'all, I originally threw this episode away because I felt like it didn't tie into Vixen the way that I wanted it to. And I'm gonna let y'all know for real, it really still don't. Like, it still doesn't. So consider this like a little extra. It's a bonus. It's a mini-sode. I'll think of a cool name at some point. I don't have it yet, but just kind of think of this episode as just like a little something extra, you know, something to send the girls off. It doesn't really tie into Vixen, but I hope that you guys still enjoy this. For people who have requested this, I hope you like this episode, and let's get into it. This is the history of the iconic hip-hop nightclub, The Tunnel, and those who frequented it. Located at 220 12th Avenue in the Meatpacking District of Manhattan, the Tunnel first opened its doors in 1986. At that time, the club was owned by Boaz Aroni and Eli Dayan. Boaz was a pretty well-known real estate developer, and Eli owned a fashion company called Bonjour International. In 1990, the pair sold the tunnel to a man named Marco Ricotta, who then sold the property again to another man named Peter Gatian. So this is where the tunnel enters its true glory days, y'all. So let's get into Mr. Peter Gatian. Peter's a really interesting dude, but I'm not going to go too much into his story in this episode. But if you want to know more about him personally, I suggest y'all read his book. It's called The Club King: My Rise, Reign, and Fall in New York Nightlife. So Peter opened his first nightclub in Ontario, Canada. It was called the Aardvark in 1973. So this was more of a like rock and roll spot, kind of dive bar-ish. It didn't have that much success. It was just kind of like an okay spot. He then realized that disco music was gaining popularity popularity and was pretty much here to stay. So he moved to Miami to convert an old nightclub into a new spot called the Limelight. This club was really, really successful. It had a ton of celebrity guests. It was kind of known as the Studio 54 of the South. Peter later opened more Limelights in Atlanta, Chicago, London, and then finally New York City in 1983. So for those who did not know, yes, the same guy that owned the Tunnel also owned the Limelight. So the Limelight was the spot in New York in the 80s, and the Tunnel kind of takes over for the 1990s. So the Limelight quickly gains traction around New York as a major hotspot, attracting celebrities such as Grace Jones, Sting, Madonna, Mick Jagger, y'all, literally everybody. Like, I would be here naming names all day. If y'all want an episode specifically on the Limelight, like another bonus episode like this, please let me know. The Limelight is insane. Would love to report on it. But anyway, back to the Tunnel. So as the Limelight grew in popularity, Peter obtained 3 more clubs in the city, which became Palladium, Club USA, and of course, the Tunnel. When these clubs were all open at the same time, Peter was allegedly earning about $1 million a week. So I believe that once the Limelight in New York took off, I think he might have franchised the other ones in Atlanta, Chicago, and London. He might have had them at the same time. I know the one in Atlanta was really, really popular. I heard, now I don't know if this is true, but I heard that they had like a live cheetah like built under like a glass. I think he was in a glass encasing, like under a glass floor. I don't know if that's making sense, y'all, but apparently that club was insane. So of course, like when these were open all at the same time, Peter was making so much money. Remember, these clubs are huge. They can fit a lot of people at once. So he was just making bank. So let me get into the Tunnel's design. The club was 80,000 square feet. It had a main room that was shaped like a tunnel, hence the name, of course. And it even had train tracks running through the dance floor. There were no tables, just the dance floor and a really, really long bar. So y'all remember, this was pre-bottle service. Like we wasn't doing the sections and stuff back then. You could buy bottles though, but you had to buy the bottles at the bar. It was kind of a weird shaped building. I'll try to describe it the best way I can. It had multiple levels, multiple rooms, and all of them were like kind of long and narrow. I'll be sure to post some photos of it if I can find some good ones. The benefit of having all these rooms is that the Tunnel was able to have multiple parties going on at one time with like 6 different DJs. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a club that has this setup, but a lot of New York clubs have adopted this later. So I think this is something that people got from the Tunnel. Also said that Live in Miami, for those who have been, is based off of the Tunnel, and so is Live on Sundays, their weekly hip hop party. Before the Tunnel became known as the hip hop haven that we know it as, it actually was another club kid spot in its early days. In the late 80s, RuPaul, Amanda Lepore, and a lot of other people were known to frequent it. It also had a weekly party called Trance that was hosted by Amanda. Later on, the Tunnel picked up where the Sound Factory bar left off after it closed in the mid-1990s. So the Sound Factory was like a really, really famous house music spot. I believe it was downtown. I'm not sure. But once that club closed, all of their patrons started to come to the Tunnel. In an interview with the Village Voice in 2014, rap group Onyx was asked to reflect on their experiences at the Tunnel. It's a condensed quote from that interview. "We used to go all the time. It was a regular occurrence. First time, though, it was crazy because it wasn't a hip-hop club when we went there. It was house music. New York in '89 had Jungle Brothers come out with I'll House You, and the shift of hip-hop changed. Hip-hop became hip-house. That's what the fuck they was calling it. So the first time we went to the Tunnel, it wasn't even hip-hop. It was house music." Then they were asked in the interview, y'all, if they were fans of house music. And they said, "We was forced to be. We was into the deep house like the Larry Levon. We was up in Mars Club, but we was always the hip hop kids in those clubs. That's where it was popping at. And this kid named Jamal, who worked in this barbershop in Brooklyn, he was into the house scene and was showing us the city. This was how we got hip to New York City. Coming from Queens, nobody went out from Queens. Nobody went to Manhattan. Jamal would put us in Manhattan in like '89, and it was house music. We enjoyed them. There was a lot of drugs in those nights. A lot of long nights," end quote. So that's kind of showing y'all what the Tunnel was like before the 1990s came along. This is very similar to the way that I've heard Limelight be described. So I think it was just like another option to go to if you didn't want to go to Limelight. Of course, the Tunnel is most known for its legendary status as a beloved hip-hop nightclub where many rappers got their first breaks. Fly girls came out in their best outfits, where major players came in the game to be seen, and much, much more. So let's get into that era. Y'all know I had to set the scene for y'all first, though. In 1993, party promoters Jessica Rosenblum and Chris Lighty, who y'all may know, were looking for a club that could permanently host their Sunday night party, Mecca. Mecca was strictly rap music and had previously been at clubs like the Grand, the Supper Club, and the Arena. So, as y'all know, it's 1993, so rap had already stolen the crown from disco music like a thief in the night. But, rap was still in its very early stages, but at this point, it was definitely the main attraction. Jessica and Chris wanted to expand the party's audience, as well as the audience of Funkmaster Flex, who y'all also may know, who Jessica managed at the time. Jessica went to meet with Peter, who had recently purchased the Tunnel, and he agreed to host the Mecca party there. Here's a condensed quote from Flex about Peter. Peter believed in the night. He liked hip-hop, he liked the artists, he understood the artists, understood their personalities, and he was a rock star to them with his eye patch. He was wielding just as much money as them, so he held his own, end quote. So this was kind of like a match made in heaven, y'all. As soon as Mecca started to be hosted at the Tunnel's popularity grew instantly. It was already pretty well known, but I think it was more so just like a place to go if you weren't going to Limelight. You know what I mean? So this really raised the club's profile. And I think for Peter, just like he had done with disco music when he realized it was taking off and he bought that club in Miami to create a disco club, he basically did the same thing here with hip-hop music and the Tunnel. He was hopping on the biggest thing for the moment, and at that time, that was rap, and it still is rap. And then the popularity of the club grew even further when Funk Flex took over the promotion of the party in 1996. This is a quote from Jessica about how Mecca helped shape the Tunnel experience. The party changed and evolved, but any party that runs for multiple years changes. The Supper Club was so pretty, the mix of the crowd, the room, the lighting. You could have every prominent industry executive, every up-and-comer, and you would seat them all at tables, these cool downtown hip-hop people. By the time it got to the Tunnel, the venue was so major, I'd say 95% of the people coming to the club on Sunday, and the Tunnel was a popular club that had big nights during the week, had never been to the club before. In the beginning, it was exciting, it was epic, it was like no other space anybody had been in. Industry was in the Tunnel heavy, but so were the streets. The artists were in there heavy, not booked or being promoted. They were there hanging out, end quote. So y'all, many rap stars like Diddy, Dr. Dre, Jermaine Dupri, Lil' Kim, Jay-Z, Missy, Tupac, Nas, Snoop Dogg, and more, y'all. The list goes on and on. All frequented the club. They all came to the Tunnel, and a lot of them performed for free at times. Here's a quote about the Tunnel from Peter's book. Leaning over the massive bar at the center of the room, Sean Combs and Jermaine Dupri used to compete to see who could line up more empty Cristal bottles. Y'all remember Cristal? Everybody was dancing, even the security girls once the rush was over. And when everybody was leaving the place, there were so many smiles. Artists like Trina, Aaliyah, Nas, The Brat, Mary J, they all performed at the Tunnel too. Some of the most remembered performances are Nas and Aaliyah performing together, DMX performing Get At Me Dog, which is probably the song that the Tunnel is most known for. The video for that song was also shot at the Tunnel. Dr. Dre and Snoop performed there. Juvenile performed his debut single there, which was Ha. After that, Cash Money became a pretty big staple at the Tunnel themselves. Many artists and songs broke there too. Some of those were I Love You by Mary J and Smith & Wesson, Ladies in the House by Big Cap, and Party Ain't a Party by Queen Pen. There were just countless others. The club was so popular that partygoers and performers were often filmed to later be shown for a local public access show called Street Funk TV. Here's a quote from Choke No Joke, a creative who shot these videos for Street Funk. I can remember Flex getting annoyed by us when we came around with the cameras. He'd be like, oh, here they go filming. Why y'all filming all the time? We knew the Tunnel era was special. Today, you see people watching the videos, asking for footage all the time because they want to relive that moment in time. You will never see performances like the ones at the Tunnel again. Of course, it was a good time, y'all, obviously, but there was a lot of crazy shit happening at the Tunnel. Y'all already know, with fun comes trouble, with big crowds usually comes trouble. Here's a quote about it from an op-ed article for Billboard written by DeTwan Thomas, the editor of Vibe, in 2018. You couldn't go to the notoriously badass function that took place on Sunday nights if you were faint of heart. Meanwhile, you weren't a top-tier rapper if you didn't perform at the perpetually packed venue. End quote. So that's right, y'all. There were fights. People were getting their chains snatched. People were getting slashed with razors. People were getting shot. Everything that you could think of. And if you are, if you've been to New York or you live in New York, like just imagine like absolute gunfire and chaos in the middle of the meatpacking district. That's exactly what it was. In May of 1996, the tunnel briefly closed when Peter got indicted on drug trafficking charges, but we'll talk more about that a little later. The club reopened in October of the same year, and Flex was now the new promoter of the Sunday night party. So I kind of mentioned that before. Jessica and Chris kind of backed away from managing the parties and promoting them, and it became like a strictly Flex thing. Once that happened, the vibe kind of changed a bit. Before, it had been a combination of like New York City downtown and the hip hop scenes. For people who live in New York, it's very similar to like the vibe that Up and Down had, in my opinion, from the way I've heard it described. It was very similar to how Up and Down was in 2015, like kind of like a combination of scenes, like a meeting of the minds. But once Flex took it over, it became like a hardcore hip hop scene. Here's more from that interview Onyx did with the Village Voice. So they were asked when they noticed the tunnel becoming more of a hip hop club and what the wildest thing was that they saw there. Early 90s when Funkmaster Flex was on Hot 97 and introduced it. He was part of the whole restructuring. Onyx was one of the first records Flex was playing, and that's where the tunnel started. The tunnel just represented all of New York. Mind your business, face to the ground, and it was just grimy like that. It was Timberland boots, 40 belows, polo, and low lifes. That time in New York was crazy. We bringing that back. Girls giving head in the unisex bathrooms, niggas getting stuck up, stick-up kids posing as security guards. It was crazy. A lot of robberies in the tunnel. It was a madhouse. A lot of fun. One moment I remember was when Tupac came in the tunnel the night or so before he got shot at Quad Studios. It was crazy because when he came in the tunnel, he had a diamond cross on his necklace, and I told him, man, I should have wore shades to the club. It was the first time I saw real crispy jewelry. Everyone used to wear the big bulky jewelry, but this was small, but you could tell it was very expensive and so well made. Then the next day he got robbed, but he was in the tunnel with that chain on straight up. We was popping bottles at the bar before with him. That's an ill memory. End quote. I love that story. I wanted to share it with y'all. The beginning of the end for the tunnel started in about 1996, and it was quite a slow crumble, y'all, so let's get into it. That year, the New York Times published what I would refer to as an expose of Peter Gadian, the tunnel's owner, and that article was called U.S. Claims 2 Nightclubs Are Drug Bazaars. So remember, Peter also owned other clubs in New York City. Here's a quote from the article. The owner of 3 of Manhattan's largest nightclubs was accused yesterday of turning 2 of them, the Limelight and the Tunnel, into virtual drug supermarkets, peddling the drug known as ecstasy to a clientele made up largely of college students and teenagers, end quote. So New Yorkers already didn't really mess with Peter like that, y'all, because once he started opening clubs in the city, I saw a lot of articles written about his personality, mainly in a negative tone. Just saw like a bunch of articles about people just not liking his personality. And I think I didn't see anyone say this, and they might have not been using the term yet, but I kind of wonder, did people think of him as a culture vulture? Did they think he was just hopping on the next thing and trying to make money, which was technically what he was doing, you know, what he did with disco music and then what he did with hip hop. I think people might have just thought he was a culture vulture and like not really, and just didn't really care about the community he was in. And it's always like, you know, you're always going to be met with a little bit of, you know, distrust when you are a person from another place and you're coming and you're making a ton of money in another city or another country in his case, because he was Canadian. So yeah, I don't know. I just saw a bunch of articles written about him where people like covered the clubs or covered him, and he just didn't seem likable to them. In 1995, the Limelight was raided. Undercover agents started to frequent the club. Peter says they would try to fit in with the rest of the clubbers. He said that the undercover agents would wear dog collars or they would dress in drag. That just wasn't convincing. And at that point, it was pretty much downhill for both clubs, unfortunately. Peter was stuck in a lawsuit for years, starting in 1998, where he was charged with drug racketeering and conspiracy. While he was in the middle of these lawsuits, Rudy Giuliani, that is the former mayor of New York City, and he is a walking trash bag for those who do not know. Sorry. That's just what he is. He was kicking off his quality of life campaign, and the tunnel, amongst other clubs around the city, were Rudy's main target with this campaign. So I'm going to high level explain what this campaign was. If you want to know more about it, there's a really good book on it called, I believe, City of Disorder. Yes, that's what it's called. But basically, the campaign was Rudy's attempt to clean the city up. It consisted mainly of high police presence, racial profiling, and all the other horrible shit that we hate. The tunnel did fall victim to this campaign, of course, and closed in 2001 due to that, and also due to non-payment of rent. That group interview with Complex I mentioned earlier, Peter said, "When I got acquitted on the drug charge, I should have folded my tent and moved out of New York and not been naive enough to think that I could beat City Hall. I had a 20-year run, and quite frankly, it ended with the feds charging me with the drug thing, though I was acquitted. The campaign thrown at me was relentless. There was a period where, in 14 months, we were closed down twice and both times went to court. Being closed for months, all of your expenses, rent, insurance, all that stuff are still being generated. Let me put it this way. We never closed for a lack of business." Here's what Flex and Cypher Sounds had to say in that same interview. "We didn't really know it was amazing while we were doing it. We thought there'd be another club. Once the money was paid off, the clubs closed. By then, there were more clubs open on Sunday nights. There were more black parties popping during the week and on Saturday. The game had changed. The club probably closed down 4 or 5 times all the years I was there. So when we closed that time, I thought, oh, we'll be back. But we never went back. There was no grand finale. It just closed." So like Cypher said, there was no warning, reopening, or a grand closing. The tunnel just closed abruptly and never opened back up again. I think a lot of people thought it was, just like he did, but that was the end. So let's talk about what happened. Peter was acquitted of all of the drug charges, but shortly after that, he got hit with a tax evasion charge, which he and his wife at the time pled guilty to. And when that was over, he had to pay nearly $2 million in back taxes and fines, and both him and his wife were deported to Canada in 2003. So that is pretty much what happened, y'all. These days, he lives in an apartment in Toronto with his current wife. I believe he's tried to get back into nightlife a couple times after he was deported. He tried to also write a TV series based on his life, which I thought would have been really interesting. I don't think it got picked up, though. He opened a club in Toronto called Circa, but that closed after only a year. And then he tried to open up a boutique hotel, but that didn't work out either. And now he says he will never try to come back to nightlife. So he kind of went out sad, y'all. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbled. It's unfortunate, but I agree with him. I think if he would have just left it alone after the drug charges, he probably would have fared a lot better. What he should have done was give up ownership or something, or found someone he knew or trusted that could be the new face of the clubs and have them play along with Rudy or whatever they needed to do. And then he could have acted as a silent partner or something like that. But I don't know. I think when you get to that point of success, he was the club king. That's what they were calling him around New York City. So I think he just thought that he was larger than life, and he thought he could beat City Hall, as he said. And I mean, once Rudy Giuliani sunk his vampire teeth into him, he just never could come back from it, and we lost a really iconic nightclub. So on a happier note, I want to share some little known facts about the tunnel and just talk about how it's been portrayed in pop culture. So the most famous hip hop scene ever in film is probably the opening scene in Belly. Y'all know the one. If you have never seen Belly, I want you to put this show on pause and go watch Belly right now. But even if you haven't seen Belly, I can't imagine that y'all haven't. But even if you haven't seen Belly, I know y'all know the scene with the blue lights where DMX, Nas, and their crew are coming through the club. That's just probably one of the most important scenes ever. thank you to Hype Williams for shooting that. But yes, that was shot in the tunnel. There is a scene in the movie Kids. It's a film by Larry Clark. That was also shot in the tunnel. I think they were like just walking through. I think they were looking for drugs. They were looking for ecstasy or something. There's also a scene in Straight Outta Compton that was based on a real life meeting between Eazy-E and Ice Cube. So it's been mentioned and seen in a couple films. It's also been memorialized in songs such as the infamous Prelude by Mobb Deep. Onyx has a few songs about the tunnel. I know they have one that is literally called The Tunnel. Queen Pen mentions it in Party Ain't a Party, and most recently Blue Benz by Nas, which is on his most recent album. And yeah, that is the story of the tunnel, y'all. So what did you guys think about this episode? I'm definitely going to post a bunch of photos. I want y'all to see like the interior of the club and like photos that people took at the club. I'm going to try to get some performances, some clips of performances to post as well. So as y'all can see, the hip hop community is very, very fond of the tunnel. I think it's a place that we are going to hear about for as long as the people who frequented it are still with us. And there is a documentary that was made on it, but I tried to buy it and I wasn't able to access it. I believe it's called The Hip Hop Nucleus. I'm going to link it in my show notes or just put the name in my show notes. I wasn't able to find it, but if y'all can find it, send it to me. But yeah, the website wouldn't let me access it. But, I know that they created that documentary. There are some clips of performances online, but I do hope that it is, memorialized in a more mainstream way. I'd love to see like a short series based on it. I think a series on Peter himself would be good, but I would love to see something that was based strictly on the tunnel and its impact. They could get Flex in, and have him be like the executive producer. I think that would be great. Like similar to what Hulu is doing with the Wu-Tang Clan story. I could see something like that for the tunnel. I think that'd be a good idea. What do y'all think? And just like the impact that it had on New York City culture, people coming there and taking those infamous club photos, that is Black culture. That is hip hop culture. Could be a Netflix movie. I think that would be dope because y'all know Netflix has budget. And what they did with the Get Down, they could do it again because they shouldn't have canceled the Get Down. But anyway, but no, they could do something similar for the story of the tunnel. I think that would be really good, especially if they got Flex in on it and had him like really be a big part of the project. So let me know if y'all want a episode. I'll do another like bonus version of an episode on the Limelight. The Limelight is a really interesting club, and I think that club has kind of gotten its flowers more than the tunnel has. So there's like more information on how the Limelight came to be and just the culture of Limelight. It was more of a mixed club, more of a disco and like house crowd. So it just, I think it just was, it just had a different kind of crowd, and they have really, really memorialized the club in writings and movies and shows and all of that stuff. So that would be pretty fun to do. Let me know if y'all want that. But I hope y'all liked this episode. I know it's a little short, but I wasn't ready to leave y'all. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode, and I will see y'all next week for the finale that I am so excited about. So by the time this goes live, I won't have posted the poll yet, but y'all know I do a really big poll for every film review finale. So this is coming out on Wednesday, the 8th, and I am going to post the poll to our Instagram stories. The page is at the Vixen Memoirs on Thursday, which is tomorrow. So Thursday, the 9th, check the page so you can vote in the poll. I love reading y'all's answers and just, communicating with y'all. So make sure y'all check out the poll on my stories on Thursday, and I will see y'all next week for an all new episode for the finale. Love y'all to the moon and back. See you there. Bye. Thank you for listening to Vixen. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a review. If you have a submission, feel free to email vixenpodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with an all new episode.